Hi everyone, I'm Maggie Weinberg with Fast Company. Welcome to the Shivas and Fast Company Fast Pitch Tour Google Hangout. We're thrilled you could join us today. This Hangout marks the culmination of a national tour we've made in partnership with Shivas to spread the word for the Win the Right Way contest, where we're inviting social entrepreneurs to compete for a share of $1 million fund. I've got a couple of co-hosts with us today. One is Morgan Clendaniel right here. He's the editor of Fast Company's Coexist website. And we've also got Shay Parton, who's the brand director and CEO of Apollos. Apollos is a socially motivated lifestyle brand that Shivas has covered on its blog, theventure.com, where you can learn more about the challenge and also read up on interesting companies in the space. So I guess to get us going today, we wanted to open with hearing from Shay and finding out a little bit more about how he started his company, the inspiration behind it, and how he grew a socially responsible business. Shay, could you tell us a little bit about your kind of founding story, your inspiration, and where you got going?
Yeah, so we grew up in Santa Barbara, and for those that have spent any time in Santa Barbara know that it's a pretty incredible place to call home, and our parents knew that we were going to be Southern California monsters if we didn't see the rest of the world. So from an early age, we traveled quite a bit and really followed our kind of thought that there's going to be all these differences from languages to currencies to plug outlets, but we were blown away with all the similarities. Everyone's got the same desire to laugh and learn and really provide for your family, and that whole idea of providing for your family really stood out to us, and our parents always heard, rather they preached that proverb, teach people how to fish rather than giving them fish. But what we learned through all these travels is there's plenty of well-trained fishermen. They often don't have the right bait or a large enough pond. And so we saw an opportunity to co-design products with communities and cooperatives and bring them to a wider audience and a stronger market, and really anchoring it to this word Apollos, which translates to global citizen, because we believe all people are created equal and should have equal access to the global market. So fast forward from selling our first T-shirt in high school in 1999, and then really to where we are today, working with over a few hundred wholesale partners like J. Crew and Nordstrom's, and our flagship store in downtown Los Angeles, and doing over half our business with our e-commerce. And so that's a quick snapshot.
That's awesome. I noticed on your website that you have a tagline that we thought was interesting, advocacy through industry. Could you explain just a little bit? You touched on teach a man to fish, but how you make that happen with your company?
Yeah, we've just noticed that it's great to build the whole concept of a portion of proceeds or the buy one give one model. We think those are all like incredibly interesting, and they've been great for the socially responsible kind of world. But we've noticed that to really empower people to determine their own future and allow them to kind of really take ownership of what they do, we've kind of summarized it with this idea of advocacy through industry. And it's really just how business can improve people's lives, and it's really kind of, I think, the heart of what social entrepreneurship is all about.
Excellent. So Morgan is the editor of Fast Company's Coexist. That's our site devoted to kind of business with a conscience and world-changing ideas. So I'd be interested in Morgan's thoughts on your ideas with Apollos.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's a great company, and it's sort of tapping into what we think is so great about social entrepreneurship, which is sort of taking this idea of giving back to the world sort of out of the siloed area of nonprofits and charities and creating, you know, this big idea right now is called shared value, where basically businesses are making money as well as helping other people make money, as opposed to just you know, giving to people. And so, you know, that's really great, and that's sort of what we're seeing a lot of in this social entrepreneurship space that we're covering. And I think it's really sort of starting to alter the fundamental fabric of business, you know, and this is a thing that not just small social entrepreneurs are doing, but it's starting to sort of trickle up into bigger companies. You know, I noticed, Shay, you're a E corporation, which is this sort of new classification of businesses that is sort of changing the fundamental way that businesses are shaped and how they interact with the world. Jay, I don't know if you want to talk a little more about what being B Corp means and sort of what it's meant for you as a company.
Yeah, so similar to LEED certification within the architectural space, B Corp's just a great sense of either going the full-fledged legal route, being a B Corp, or taking the assessment, which is equally as helpful. And Patagonia was the first B Corp in California. We were shortly there behind them. And it's just a great overall kind of way to get out of it just being a marketing story. Ultimately, having this kind of sense of checklist, all out of environmental and social standards. Passing score is an 80. Absolutely perfect score is a 200. The average is around like a 96 or something. We've just like barely gotten by with like an 81, and it's all because it's an insanely, incredibly tough process that we've been thankful to learn a lot. Learn a lot from.
Awesome. So to shake up the conversation, we've brought in a few socially minded entrepreneurs that we met on the road on our Fast Pitch tour. I mentioned before we touched down in San Francisco, New York City, and Chicago. And I wanted to introduce Holly Cardew, who's the founder of a company called Pix. We saw her at our San Francisco event. And Holly, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your company, and then throw out a question and let us hear back a little bit more from Morgan and Shay.
Yeah, sure. So my company Pixie, what we do is we provide on-demand content services to e-commerce stores. So we primarily, first service that we're offering is image editing on demand. So what we do is small to medium business owners who don't have the budget or the skill set to edit their product images, they send them to us, where we connect people in developing countries to edit and remove the background. So it's a bit like a Lyft or Uber model where we have people on demand, which allows us to scale up and scale down, but it also allows the people in developing countries to have a job whenever they want. They can go to another job if they want to, but it also allows the small to medium business owners to, instead of having a graphic designer or a photographer full-time, they can still optimize their images and look like larger store, essentially. I guess the question that I really have is around, I look at Tom's model where they really promote the whole social entrepreneurship and what they're doing and how they're giving back. We don't yet promote what culture we're creating internally in the developing countries. So I have about 50 people who work on demand at the moment, and we have created a culture. So we have a Facebook group, and we discuss things, but the customers don't see that side, and I'm curious, when do you promote that to the customers and what you're doing, or does it not matter?
Shay, do you want to take that one? Because I know that you're pretty transparent about the mission of your company.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I'm talking to Holly, correct?
Yes, correct.
Holly, we need to talk. I could use you tomorrow.
I was looking at your photos. I'm like, they're all on a great background. They haven't been.
So all that to be said, I think what we've been blown away, and similar to Yvonne and his team at Patagonia, is that product is everything, and similar to kind of just a business model is everything. The purpose is important, but I think that is ultimately just what builds loyalty and what people find as they trust your product. So all that to be said is know that you can take the time and energy to make that a marketing strategy, but don't kill yourself and don't spend too many late hours or excess budget on it, because it's ultimately something that I think is very organic and very like, if someone shares an image from one of your kind of work on demand side of things, it's like, oh, that's a great social kind of opportunity. But if you got to like kill yourself to build a whole part of your website or a whole thought that's going to actually move the needle, it's really frustrating how little that actually moves the needle, and ultimately the product is everything.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do see that too. That's why, I always focus on the business side, because at the end of the day, the business is paying for the job to be done. But it's nice to know what we're doing on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Shay. I think that's a really interesting segue, actually. I want to introduce the group to another entrepreneur that we met in San Francisco, Laura Lee Wunsch. She runs a company called Oxcott Hose Co. And I want to hear a little bit more about the company first, and then a question as well. But the segue kind of popped to me because I know that your tagline, or something that was just apparent on your site when I checked it out, was exclusive designs with a heroic past. So you're hinting at this kind of idea. But if you could tell us more about your company, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, first of all, for hosting this. This is amazing. So I'm so honored to be a part of this conversation. Yeah, and I think it is. We are a little bit different. Perhaps, you know, Holly's comment actually sparked something with me as well, because what we do at Oxcott, comes from, the name comes from the very first fire hose, which was created by the Greeks in ancient Greece, literally from the gut of an ox. So that's where the name Oxcott comes from. And what we do is reclaim fire hose. We work with fire departments, primarily in California right now, to reclaim fire hose, to salvage it before it's sent off, you know, to landfill or to be disposed of. And then we work with local artisans to make home furnishings and accessories with that reclaimed fire hose. I'm also working with manufacturers to keep their remnants from going to waste as well. So there's a lot of story and a lot of history, a lot of community in what we do just inherently. Everything we do comes from three fundamental points, which is keep this amazing material out of landfill, put it into the hands of local artisans and makers so that we're bringing work and jobs to local designers and partnering with them and collaborating with them to create products that are based on the material that we get. So everything is inspired by the fire hose itself. And then to also give back to the community, so working with the fire departments, but also local burn foundations to bring a portion of profits back into the community. And in addition, what we're starting to do is look at workforce labor pools with different organizations, also currently in the Bay Area. But once we, you know, refine our processes here and our work methods here, we want to go out then and replicate this, our process and our work into communities all over the U.S. Obviously, every community has a fire department. Metropolitan areas experience the same thing we do here with waste and the need for jobs. And then, of course, it's ultimately a global. I don't know if it's obvious, but it is to us that this is a global situation that we've discovered. So our story really comes from a very sort of simple place of just salvage and reclamation, and that's a big part of our designs, because our designs are in fact inspired by that material, quite literally. So, so we're out with our story from the very beginning, and the products that we make are within certain categories at the moment. But to this point, what we've done is really work in terms of proof of concept in a way. So we've explored using different types of fire hose. We've developed relationships with fire departments and secured this idea that the material is there and available, and that the fire departments want to work with us. But from here, there's a scalability where the material can be used in all sorts of different ways. Fire hose could be used in industrial ways. There are different divisions that we have in mind long term. My question, I have so many questions, so it's hard for me to narrow it down to just one. But what I struggle with right now is keeping those good people that you mentioned, Shay, that we love to work with and that we do work with currently, keeping them with us as we go through this very early stage of startup and struggling with cash flow. And everyone wants to work with us because we're doing something interesting and different, but keeping those people and keeping that thread and that momentum and consistency building is really hard when we're still fundraising. Have you gone through that, and if so, how did you deal with developing those partnerships?
Cool. And it's Laura Lee, correct?
It is. Yeah. Sorry, I babbled on. I talked, I'm sure, far longer than I was supposed
you're
to.
Great. My mother's a Laura Lee, so I love it. But all that being said, I wanted to just kind of like encourage you to pick up the new Patagonia book. It came out I want to say 2 years ago. It's not Let My People Go Surfing. It's like the socially responsible company. And Yvonne's team kind of leads the intro by just saying, if we watch what everyone else is doing, we're going to be out of business. Like we can't play by the rules. We have to be aware of the health of our business more than the heart or the philosophy or the Kool-Aid of doing good. And so often I kind of just say something that sounds really, I think, counterintuitive, but don't do too much good. And what I mean by that is that you can find yourself overstretching to maybe employ more people or overstretching to touch as many kind of relationships as possible, but you're a mile wide and an inch deep, and it's just really hard to sustain. And so what I've constantly been telling my brother, who's the uber creative, and I'm just like the business side of what we do, is, hey, we're going to be the most effective if we do this for 50 years. But if we just do it for a year, that's not really helping anyone.
Right.
Great, thanks, Shay. To keep the discussion going, I wanted to introduce another awesome entrepreneur that we met on the road, this time in Chicago just last week. We met Elwin Reed, and he's behind a company called EFF Waste, which is actually just about to launch, I believe. Elwin, could you tell us a little bit about your company and then ask another question as well? I think Elwin, on my end, I'm having an audio issue. I can't quite hear you. Could you try it just one more time? Shoot. No such luck. Hey, Elwin, if you would tweet it in, we'll have one of our team here pass it over, and we'll ask for you. I'm sorry about that. In the interim, I know, Laura Lee, you said you had 1 million. Could you fire away with one more?
Oh boy, put me on the spot. I think my questions are also, I feel that because we have something of a unique story, we get a lot of inquiries. A lot of people reach out to us right now and say, hey, share your products with us, marketing platforms primarily, I would say. How do you, I guess just in general, how, did you guys develop sort of a filter or a way in which you decided or figured out who are the best people to work with? Did you, develop some criteria in terms of who you decided to partner with or didn't?
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's pointed to me, correct?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, sorry, or anyone.
So I think what has been kind of our ongoing reality is that if we have to handhold in any way, we're often over kind of extending ourselves. And so to date, we get about 1 to 2 artisan opportunities a day, and we go forward with like 1 out of 100, just due to the logistics, the pricing, the product quality, all of these things that we feel like have to stand on their own. And so if we have to be like a backstop or like in any way hand-holding, it's so hard for us to manage unless we're going to employ an army, and that's not our business model internally. And so we're ultimately wanting to find artisans or any kind of formal partners on the marketing side that are so talented on their own, and they're ultimately taking ownership over it, and it allows it to be that much more personal and genuine in their kind of way that it comes out, and how we find a sense of genuine and real partnership.
Excellent. I think we have Elwin's question in via email. I'm going to read it out, but Elwin, maybe if you want to chime in, we can try again. But from Elwin, who's behind EFF Waste, the company tackling efficient waste, I'm in startup mode, and I know being able to show that a business can generate revenue and profits is important, but how important is the why of the company beyond just showing the revenue potential? So Shay, if you want to tackle that one as well, and then maybe Morgan over here could chime in to add to your comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to make sure I'm tracking the question. So as far as like the way that money is raised versus, and I'm hurting for you, Owen. I know how it feels to like not be able to get the technology stuff to work. So just give me a nod if I'm like close to the question. But the profitability side is obviously important. But as far as like how you're able to kind of like better understand like the why, like what you do, is that pretty much the question? Okay, I got a nod. Love it. All right, so I guess what I'm completely I guess trying to give this awareness of is that if you spend too much time around friends that are starting tech companies, you're quickly going to be, I think, disillusioned to reality as far as things happening overnight. And so I think the why is important for sure, but if you can't stay in business for 5 to 10 years, you could have the best why in the world, but if you're not profitable, you're really going to have a hard time finding investors, finding people that want to get behind you. And so I think the why is like, it's almost like just something that's innate in what you do, why you do it. But if the business model can't stand on its own 2 legs, and it's ultimately kind of in the spot of like asking everyone to drink the Kool-Aid, and you're just kind of like pulling and just doing everything to get people on board, I think it just burns people out, and it's hard to sustain.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that as we're covering these companies, you know, we are always super interested in people that have interesting stories and interesting solutions. But at the end of the day, you know, a question we always ask people is, you know, are you making money or are you on track to making money? Because if the solution isn't generating profit for a socially responsible business, then there might be something fundamentally wrong with the solution. If you're like framing it as a business solution to the problem. So I think the why is incredibly important to start. You know, you need a good why, and you should be focusing on a problem for a good reason, but the way you're focusing on the problem needs to be making money at some point down the road, and you need to have a plan for that.
Great. Thanks, guys. At this point, I think we'll move over and take a couple questions from Twitter. I also wanted to remind anyone watching that you can feel free to fire away with questions using the hashtag #WinTheRightWay. But one that we got in from S. Warmy was, what qualities should every social entrepreneur possess? And I want to shake it up a little bit here and give Shay a little bit of a break. So I'd love to learn, Holly, Lauralee, and Shay, what you think is either the quality you have that makes you most successful as a social entrepreneur, or one that you wish you had or think would be great or is important for this kind of work.
And that's going to Holly, correct?
Or whoever wants it.
Sorry, it
Yeah,
froze, so I didn't hear the question.
Everybody.
What was the question? Could you repeat it? Sorry, it froze.
Oh, sure. So the question that came in from Twitter was, what qualities should every social entrepreneur possess, or what quality? So one that you have that really kind of helps drive your business, or one that you think's just important in general to this kind of work.
I think you really need to understand and be passionate about the problem you're solving. Like I actually started out helping the businesses because I didn't believe that they should have a photographer or a graphic designer and be paying them $80 plus an hour to remove the background. And then I looked for ways in which to solve the problem. And I just realized I was really passionate about giving these people in developing countries these jobs because they were constantly asking for work and they just wanted something to do at home rather than having to travel 2 hours in traffic in the middle of Bangladesh to get to work and then be paid nothing. They're not allowed to talk to each other. So if you're passionate about what you're doing, I think that's the core focus.
Yeah, and I just agree with everything that Holly's saying, and I would add that it's the same characteristics as any other entrepreneur. I think what I love about this whole campaign that is Win the Right Way with Shivas is this is the kind of future of what business is looking like. Every entrepreneur is hungry, every entrepreneur wants to work hard, every entrepreneur is passionate. But I think today there's this new kind of philosophy for it's not worth it if it doesn't have any purpose or soul or kind of sense of goal, and those are, I think, just much more relevant to modern consumer culture, and I think it's just really expected. So I'd kind of just say that for what entrepreneurship looks like in the grand scheme of social entrepreneurship, it's the same characteristics, but it just has to have a purpose.
Great, thanks. Another question in from Twitter from @warrior. Just looking for a couple of tips, like simple tips for staying true to the mission.
Ooh.
Or staying inspired about your mission, maybe.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm constantly blown away by is how important it is to have the right people around you, especially the people that care more about your sanity than maybe your mission. Because if you all believe in the mission, you're going to get there, and you're going to, I think, be that much more, I think, resourceful and creative. But if you're ultimately just in this spot of like working each other under the table and just burnout mode, you're often kind of just in this spot of really just not being a team that can really do it for a long time. And so I think the mission is often overestimated, and I think so much of it has to do with the health of working together and being in a place where you can find friends and partners that are willing to do things very strategic and very mindful for everyone to be on the same page.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I think to stay on track, we're going to wrap it up now. I wanted to remind everybody watching again, you can still tweet into #WinTheRightWay with comments. We'll comment back from @FCSpotlight. And wanted to remind everyone that the entrepreneurs we had with us today all joined us on our Fast Pitch Tour because they are entering Shivas's Win the Right Way contest, where they'll be competing for their share of a $1 million fund. So we wanted to remind everyone watching that you can go visit theventure.com to sign up and compete in this challenge as well. We'll be judging entries based on social purpose, viability, scalability, and practicality. So hopefully you learned a few tips today that can help shape your pitch and your company moving forward. Just wanted to thank all our panelists today for joining us. And I think wrap it up. That's it. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.